Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. As always here, I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander, and today I'm joined by Jake Carlson and Patrick McDermott. Patrick, how's it going?
It's going great, man. About to be Christmas, the great holiday season, and it's also one of the best sports times in the year. So, a lot to be grateful for, a lot of football. So we should get into it.
For sure. Jake, I don't know if you're familiar here, but Patrick's a Notre Dame fan. His dad went to Notre Dame. So we've got a little bit of talking to do regarding, some Oklahoma State PlayStation Fiesta Bowl.
I'm glad he just didn't say I'm Catholic. Like, I'm glad it wasn't just
that. Yeah, so that's enough for some people just to make him a Notre Dame fan. Yeah, that's super true. Yeah, my dad went there. In fact, the year he graduated, that was the season that they won their last national title. So definitely grew up on Notre Dame football. Do we want to start there? We want to start with that game, get into a bowl preview of sorts.
Yeah, I think that's going to be, we're going to run through bowl game stuff, talk a little bit Lincoln Riley, of course, get the Texas perspective. Jake and I have talked ourselves to death about the OSU perspective, but a larger perspective is always better. And then discuss a little bit about the MLB here at the end, because I've got a Braves super fan and Astros super fan. Relatively big fan as well. I don't know. I'm thinking I'm a Padres super fan because I can't name every player on the roster, but I don't know. It's what it is. So anyways, with that being said, of course, on January 1st, New Year's Day, we've got Oklahoma State playing against number 5 Notre Dame, number 9 Oklahoma State playing against number 5 Notre Dame. Patrick, I'll ask you first here. You've got the best Notre Dame player, the running back, and the best defensive player, a middle linebacker, I believe, both opting out of the game.
Safety, yeah. Kyle Hamilton, will not be playing. Kyron Williams, the running back, like we know how it is. I mean, he's a really good back. I mean, but I think the offense will still operate without him. This is a big game for Notre Dame, I think, because new coach, first one under the new coach, Coach Freeman. Big deal to elevate him to head coach, I think. So this is just going to be a key game for kind of instilling culture. And I know he's an absolute players coach, and I'm sure he was extremely understanding of those players opting out. But yeah, it is disappointing. You'd love to see him at full strength. But as far as we know, Cone is playing, so they'll have their starting quarterback. Who's sitting out for the Cowboys?
So far, I don't think anyone is. Jake, I haven't seen really anyone sitting out for the Oklahoma State side. I would think Jalen Warren, our running back, it was the running back on the team, but injured for the final game of the season, of course, against the Big 12 Championship against Baylor, and pretty injured against OU. We played them as well. I don't think he's going to play all of the game, but he hasn't opted out, and he's been named a captain, so I think he's playing.
There we go.
But we may just see him in limited form, more or less.
Yeah, because they said he was 60% against Iowa State, and I think we saw him a couple snaps. And given what's that economic term, ceteris paribus, if all remains the same, if he plays, we probably win. Like if the game is exactly how it turned out, which it wouldn't have been, but if the game was exactly how it turned out, he probably scores a touchdown.
I would hope in the Big 12 Championship he does. Granted, that many shots at the goal line, him probably asking to go in every single play. Sucks they didn't get the chance, but nonetheless, I think he'll play against Notre Dame a little bit. It'll be national TV. I mean, it's one of the biggest bowl games, right? What I put in the whole New Year's 6 bowl games is the outline, because those are always the games we look forward to. Like, there was a game today. Do you remember the name of the two teams playing even? Like, it took me a second. I know
Old Dominion was one of them.
Yep.
Old Dominion was one of them. And I think they played at Coastal Carolina's field. But I don't know. There's no way it was a home game for Coastal, was it?
No, it's a 6-6 Old Dominion versus a 6-6 Tulsa playing in Coastal Carolina. So, like, bowl games have just kind of become, I don't want to say about the wayside, but
they're exhibitions.
They're a fun thing that when players opt out of, but when players are all in, it's a lot of fun. It's also a lot of fun if it's a New Year's bowl game, but the ones where it's like the Gasparilla.com Bowl or whatever. Cool, he made a bowl game.
I really enjoyed when the Fiesta Bowl was sponsored by Battle Frog. That was a good era for a while there. I think Battle Frog.
It didn't work.
Yeah, I think they must have spent every dollar they had to get the naming rights to the Fiesta Bowl. But you better believe I Googled what Battle Frog was. So it did their job. They got what they wanted, but it just wasn't enough. So, but as far as like on the field in this game, so like
right.
Obviously, Oklahoma State's defense is really good, and it doesn't sound like anybody's sitting out for them on that. So, like, I like the under in this game. I don't think that Notre Dame is they're not high powered offensively, really. I mean, Cone is a capable quarterback, but obviously, their offensive line is always going to be competent at Notre Dame. I don't think personally that this is an exceptional Notre Dame team. I think if they were I think they would have lost to any of the teams in the playoff. Number 5, like they deserve a number 5 rating, but I don't necessarily think Notre Dame is the 5th best team in the country. So I do think Oklahoma State can force some turnovers potentially, just get Notre Dame off the field. And I think it'll be a low scoring ball game potentially. And I do think Spencer Sanders is a little bit erratic with the football. And even without Kyle Hamilton back there, a little bit, even without Kyle Hamilton back there, I do think Notre Dame can disrupt him as well. So I like Notre Dame like 20-17, something like that.
Hey, you didn't go to OSU, so you can use a better word than erratic. Irresponsible,
unpredictable,
insurance policy,
frustrating. I'm sure. Yeah.
Bad. Bad is bad. What we can
we can say tough. We can say rough.
More.
There's a lot of things with Spencer Sanders. Well, any quarterback who throws 4 interceptions, in the game is just not going to make it real high on the priority list to me. Like, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him play. Defense, though, for sure.
I will say it's funny. Patrick's prediction was basically what you and I both said on the previous podcast as our prediction, just reverse.
Except for the scores flipped. Yeah, except for 21-17 Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I had 21-17. I said basically the exact same thing you did, just with more with less praise. I said the game will probably be abysmal to watch. It probably won't be very enjoyable because, like, you're talking about 2 potentially inept offenses going against 2.
I don't know.
I mean, 10 defenses.
Notre Dame's offense is pretty good. I mean, I do. It's not a playoff offense. Yeah, but I think it's pretty okay.
Is it? I mean, is it good relative to competition?
I think so. I mean, Notre Dame won in dominant fashion their last 4 or 5 games of the year, and I'm pretty sure scored at least 40 points in their last 5 games. I'd have to check the stats on that.
I know one was against Stanford.
Stanford, they put up 45. Yeah, they put up 50 plus against Georgia Tech. What else am I thinking of here?
I will say, Patrick, those 2 teams are absolutely awful.
No, they are. Yeah, no, definitely. That is a fact. They also beat Navy,
who beat Army.
So yeah, I mean, if there's things you can get excited about, that's one of them for sure.
I think this Oklahoma State team could hold Notre Dame to a really low amount of points, but I don't think our offense is going to be able to do much. Our offense hasn't been able to do much against a lot of teams. Because we had we scored 37 against OU, but I mean, 7 of those points are in a kick return. Another 7 are on a bad turnover that are right next to the goal line. So, I mean, in all seriousness, I love our defense, but the offense is just making me feel uneasy. I got the upset stomach. I need some Pepto-Bismol when we're on offense, really.
And
it's just tough.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, but most Notre Dame teams don't seem like the type of teams that make a ton of mistakes, just in general. And we can get into the OU stuff later, but given with what is coming out about OU, about how Lincoln Riley was potentially like already accepting the USG job in September, they would be more prone to mistakes, just flat out. So I know Freeman is still going to have the interim tag, which I think is a little unfair because if they go out and win, then they go out and win. And he's recruited a lot of the team anyways. So it's not like it's.
Yeah, no, super true. Yeah, and he's not the interim coach. Like he's been named, he's been named the full-time head coach, which is
for the bowl game
unusual.
He'll have the title, which is funny.
Like I think that might be the most significant part of this whole thing, and I think like any other big-time program would have named an interim coach for the bowl game and then went out and gotten their guy afterwards. Yeah. But stuff just doesn't work like that this year. Like teams were so quick on the trigger to get their guy. I think Notre Dame was like, somebody is going to come after Freeman if we don't. And if you believe all the reports, it sounds like Brian Kelly was fully intending to take Freeman with him to LSU. And allegedly,
what's the OC's name?
Tommy Rees.
Yeah, and Tommy Rees as well.
So Tommy Rees came out with a, brick wall speech basically saying I'm not going anywhere, and which of course all the players loved and it was great and everything. And again the report was that Freeman got offered like $400K more to go to LSU and he chose to stay and be the head coach. So to me that's just something. Like I think they must have had this ready to roll, because basically Kelly resigned, and about 48 hours later, they announced Freeman. So I like the move. I think at Notre Dame, I think Kelly built that Notre Dame program from the ground up, and like he should get a ton of credit for that. And I think Marcus Freeman, like he might be the guy for 20 years. Like we'll see.
I completely agree. Like, I mean, look at Cincinnati. He recruited like the whole team. He did. So
yeah,
I think like if you're Notre Dame, this is probably the guy you wanted, especially because his name was being thrown around with Oklahoma. And again, we'll get to that more later. But anytime you're thrown around as like Oklahoma has interest in you, you're probably a damn good coach. Like you probably are. So, and I would say Marcus Freeman, like even before Brian Kelly left, was the hot commodity that was circled.
Agreed. He might have been the Lincoln Riley to Bob Stoops, or the what's the other one, like a Ryan Day to an Urban Meyer, like that. They probably saw this coming, and I wouldn't be surprised if, just like the Lincoln Riley USC thing, I wouldn't be surprised if Brian Kelly was approached and basically offered the LSU job the day they announced they weren't bringing Ogeron back. Like, I feel like Notre Dame probably had some clue this was coming. But who knows?
Well, I listened to one of the podcasts that Tommy Rees was on recently, where he goes in kind of like the timeline of Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame.
Oh, really?
And so he was on the Ryan Russell podcast where Russell interviews him, and the story goes is that they play Stanford and then they stay in California to recruit the California kids. So they head up, basically recruiting starts the next day. Reese, Kelly, are both, with a bunch of other guys from Notre Dame, all going up and down the coast. They're going down to Orange County, etc. But the next day, news starts breaking about Lincoln Riley, and they're on the golf course, but they're on like a private golf course, a bunch of Notre Dame alums who got him on there, etc. And then later that night, they go to a dinner with the Notre Dame alum. And again, more information's breaking. Kelly's not really acknowledging any of it, though. He's not telling any of them. And even he's like, "Oh, it's all BS. It's all BS. Don't even, whatever." But he's saying in coach talk. Is just what Reese was repeating. Like, hey, like he's saying it's BS, but we all kind of know there's probably something up here.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Exactly. And then next day, Kelly can't hold it off anymore. They skip one of the recruiting houses they were going to go to, one of the recruits, and visit. They don't do it. And then Kelly tells them, like, hey, listen, this is true. I'm going. But at some point, Reese was like, yeah, he got a call. And at some point when he got that call, the mood kind of changed after that call. So Curious if that call was the call from LSU's, or from his agent saying, "Hey, deal's done. We got exactly what we wanted," or whatever, and changes right then. So it goes to show you, like, okay. And then Kelly probably flew through the night straight to Notre Dame, East Coast time, West Coast swing. Probably gets there at like 5 a.m, has time to change, shower, dress, and then go meet the team immediately.
So that's why he called the super early morning meeting. That's interesting, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to. I gotta send that podcast to my brothers because they'll eat that up. Yeah, it's been an interesting off season. But.
Yeah, the Ryan Russillo one. It's not the most recent one. I think it was like last week sometime, but it's with the Tommy Reese in the name. So
well, I'm sure that you like to do your part to help out. The small up and coming podcasts like Ryan Russillo.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
just
exactly. Want to shout him out,
free shout out for him, give him a little free
shout out. Yeah. I'll send him a link to this one just so you can retweet it, be like, "Hey, Russillo, I don't know if you heard, I shouted you on the podcast."
Have you guys ever heard of that? You ever heard of that small band, the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
They're coming to SoFi Stadium. I don't know if you knew about it. They're coming to SoFi Stadium. It's in Inglewood. You heard of Inglewood? It's a city in LA. LA's Los Angeles.
I don't think I'm familiar.
But with that being said, I am curious to get your Mike Gundy thoughts, because Jake and I have had this discussion a couple different times where I've grown up an Oklahoma State fan, as you know. I mean, been an Oklahoma State fan since 2000 or a year before. Was born into it. Not changing anytime soon. So when people are going, "Oh, Mike Gundy this, Mike Gundy that," the OAN shirt, the Bedlam record, whatever, and talking the negatives, I always talk the positives. Well, okay, but Gundy is an Oklahoma guy. He gets the culture of the state of Oklahoma, so he does stuff that's probably not a great look to wear an OAN shirt, and publicly. Probably not a great look to do X, Y, and Z, but also probably not a great thing to have the biggest game of your season go pretty darn badly on offense when you came up as an OC, right? But that happens pretty darn good on defense when that's not Gundy's thing. So, Jake and I have gone back and forth on it. I'll say it that way.
Okay.
You're, big Texas fan, and you've seen coaching changes. You've seen Oklahoma State win a couple times and have a better record against Texas in the past decade for the first time ever, right? Texas historically on Wikipedia beats Oklahoma State, is winning that record, right? And is winning that record for, I don't know how many more years in a row Oklahoma State have to win, but is winning the record, and it's the dominant name in college football outside of Alabama in my mind. So with all of this setup here and much longer explanation, what do you think of Mike Gundy? Should Oklahoma State stick with him for the long run? I mean, clearly this next season, he signed like a lifetime contract more or less. Now it's a rollover. But
okay. Yeah,
I want to get your Gundy thoughts as a
as an outsider,
someone who knows a lot. Yeah.
I mean, okay, so I think Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State in general are in that kind of sweet spot of the mid-level, like a mid-tier Power 5 program that has their coach and is really not interested in changing because they have their culture intact with that guy. Now, every few years, they're probably going to peak, like this year and have a 10, 11 win season, which is great. Like this is a highly successful year for Oklahoma State. And they're definitely capable of winning their conference, in any given year. Like they're in play to win the Big 12. And that's really where you want to be as a program of that size and caliber. Now, Oklahoma State is a better program than Northwestern, but it's kind of the Northwestern Pat Fitzgerald argument, or like the Utah Kyle Whittingham, where it's like these schools have a history of success, particularly Utah, in this example. Like Utah has 10-win seasons all the time, but they're realistic about expectations. Like, okay, if our coach doesn't like if Oklahoma State didn't hire Mike Gundy and say, if you don't win a national championship in 4 years, you're getting fired, because that's the way it goes with your LSUs and your Bamas and your Ohio States. So that's just the way it is. And I think Gundy's a perfect fit at OSU, and I don't see any reason for him to go anywhere. That's part of why Patterson being out at TCU is such a surprise, because that's practically an identical situation.
Right.
And I think TCU might be a more comparable program to Oklahoma State. I still think Oklahoma State is a higher tier Big 12 team, but they're in that zone, and I think he's the equivalent coach. I think Gary Patterson is kind of more of a trailblazer when it comes to defense, but like as far as being a guy that players want to play for, I think Mike Gundy is really good, and they should keep him around. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's more or less my answer. My answer has always been, who else would it be besides Gundy? Gundy's brought us this much dominance and success. I've looked it up, right? Oklahoma State, its record against Texas all time is we are 10-26 all time against University of Texas in football. Right? Other sports, not sure. But Texas dominated this streak for 12 straight wins from 1998 to 2009. So 5 of those games when Gundy was the coach, right? 5 years straight. So to think, oh, okay, well, we're the second best team, or we're the number 1 team in the Big 12. I think that's debatable year in, year out now as being the second best team. Now being the best team, as long as OU's there, right?
Probably
winning
not.
that many Big 12 championships in a row. Yeah, we're not. But that does move me into a different question. And it comes back to our whole coaching carousel of OU now is in a tough spot. Now you and I have talked about it, where it's, well, are they in that bad of a spot because Brent Venables helped them out, or not, whatever. But I don't think Venables was the right hire for OU. I think he's a fine hire, but I think he was not their first pick. You probably know that.
Okay.
How they hired him.
I see.
You know what I mean? So
you're saying if they would have got their first pick, it would have been earlier?
Yeah. That's my guess.
Okay.
Just
do that. Yeah.
It took him like almost 2 weeks to get him Venables. Middle of recruiting cycle. They were definitely, at least they act like they were caught off guard, even if they weren't. I think they were caught off guard. Point being, though, is like, I think of OU as bringing in Heisman Trophy caliber quarterbacks into their system. That's what they've done for the past 5, 10 years, 20 years, we want to say. I mean, we can go down the list of Jason White, Josh Heupel. We don't
need to do that.
Sam Bradford. Yeah, we don't need to do this.
Yeah,
right?
Why give him?
Everyone gets this, right?
Yeah.
So by them bringing in a defensive-minded coach, when they go to the SEC, I think OU's much better winning games if Lane Kiffin's their type of head coach versus having a lockdown defense type of coach, right? That's just my point on it. So I don't think they're in a great spot there. But how do you see OU and Texas faring in the SEC when that move happens here? However soon it happens to be?
Not well. Right away, at least. Yeah, not well. I mean, the good news is for both programs, but particularly for Texas, the recruiting cycle this year for Texas was outstanding. Like both with transfers, obviously with getting Ewers, like massive. I mean, like that's a generational kid potentially. You can't count your eggs before they're in the basket, but like the kid looks unreal. And we just like the one position that Texas still is having trouble recruiting and keeping guys is wide receiver. And they actually just got rid of their wide receiver coach, Andre Coleman. So they're going to bring in a new guy, probably to try to help with recruiting. So I think like they're building a team now and seeing the success that Sark is having on the recruiting trail in just his first, 3 quarters of a real cycle of it. Like it's really encouraging. So that part is good. I do think it depends on when they join. Because currently, it could potentially be 2024, 25, which is a long time. But I think it'll depend. I think Notre Dame's going to get a lot better in the next 2-3 years. But I do think they'll struggle. Like Notre Dame isn't going to the SEC and beating Bama. They're not going there and beating Georgia, although we did beat them in the Sugar Bowl relatively recently. But yeah, OU is tougher. I mean, I'm not sure I agree with you that they should have gotten an offensive guy. I mean, do do you think they were trying to get Kiffin? I mean, there were definitely reports of that, but like Kiffin, I feel like would leave Ole Miss for Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I mean, that
I think he would. I think he would have for the right amount of money. They ended up paying Venables $1 million less a year than they were paying Lincoln Riley.
Really?
So
wow.
yeah, Lincoln Riley, when he left, was getting paid 7.7, 7.5.
Jeez. It's a
Venables
ton.
getting paid. Yeah, right. It's more money
So
than
much.
all of us can imagine. But when I put it in the context of like, oh, they're paying $1 million less, that doesn't sound great, right? So
I
Venables
guess
getting paid 6.5 or 6.4. And in my mind, that doesn't technically mean too much. Venables is like first-time head coach, especially first-time Power 5 head coach, etc.
That's
so,
the only thing that makes me nervous about Venables, that he hasn't been a head coach. Now, I don't necessarily agree with you that defense can't be OU's identity. Like, maybe that's what they want. You know, maybe they want to switch up the identity and be a defensive team. I do think, like, the fact that Venables, or really the fact that Clemson was able to keep Venables, and they paid him a lot of money to make sure they did that. Like, I think he was the highest paid assistant in college football for like 5 straight years or something.
Yeah.
So that to me says he is that good. And Clemson knows that if they lose Venables, they could potentially fall apart. So I think he really is that good. Plus, I just love the guy, like his hold back, the hold back guy, keeping him on the sidelines. It's all just electric. Like, I'm a big fan of the guy. He's got a lot of intensity. And I was actually a pretty big fan of the duo of him and Sweeney. Like, I thought they were a great duo on the sidelines. And, so yeah, I really like him a lot. I think he's a good coach. It doesn't mean that I think OU is any more likable now. Certainly not.
Right. Certainly not.
Yeah.
So
of course,
under no circumstances.
I said this about Venables. I thought it was a really good hire. My mom went to Clemson, so automatically I'm a little
we go.
A little softer to Clemson. But I think, and Calvin and I talked about this on the previous one, I think they hired Venables with the SEC in mind. I think it was an SEC kind of hire, just because defense. I mean, and they hired, they didn't get Lane Kiffin, so what did they do? They get his OC. Like,
yep.
They're like, okay, whatever. And Lane Kiffin, I did look it up to make sure I wasn't crazy. He signed a contract extension December 6th. So it could have been something like you said, Calvin, where maybe they did call Kiffin and Kiffin said, no, I'm going to stay.
Well, I know some delirious OU fans, and I do mean delirious, because they thought, oh, Dabo's coming or something dumb, right? Like, there were some OU fans out there going, oh, well, you can't wait. We're going to get, Sarkisian's going to come to OU. Like,
it's the same. It's the same thing that happened. Yeah, when we fired Herman. Everybody was like, we're getting Urban Meyer or Nick Saban. Saban is coming to Texas. Urban Meyer is coming to Texas, and yeah, it was like, come on.
I mean, Urban.
Urban apparently was in the
mix.
Know. Apparently,
yeah.
But maybe
Urban. But yeah, okay, we're gonna.
Aren't you glad you got Sark? Count your blessings, Patrick.
I know, seriously. Urban Meyer, what a nightmare. I mean, the thing is, like, getting Venables to prepare for the SEC, Texas getting Sarkisian, I wonder, like, because when they announced the move to the SEC, they said it had been in discussion for about 6 months.
Yeah.
Which seems short to me. Like, what I want to know is, did the boosters decide that they wanted Texas to move? Because the boosters control everything. Let's be clear. Did the boosters decide Texas was going to move to the SEC and then decide, okay, if we're going to do this, we got to go get a Bama guy and get him to bring all of Bama's staff with him so that we can compete in the SEC? Or did they do that first And when Sarkisian came in, did he say, look, guys, we're not going to do anything in the Big 12. Like, we need to start playing the big boys and get real SEC recruits. Was Sark part of the push to join the SEC, or had this actually been in the works for like a year or two, and this was part of the plan?
I know this is rhetorical. I personally think it was in the works, because I think it's been in the works for a while. We know conference alignment has been in the works for a while.
You'd think it would have to be, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So like you said, I think they probably, and I still think Sark is a good hire. I mean, he's playing with a bunch of guys that aren't his. He's playing with a bunch of kids that complained that they got MF'd on the bus by their defensive line coach, and everybody cried about it. Absolutely hilarious. Like, I'm sorry, if you play football and you get MF'd and cry about it, you should probably pick a different.
I don't think that's what happened. The worst part of that was that.
Did you watch the video? It wasn't that bad.
I'm sure it was electric.
I'm sure
everybody loved it. Everybody loved it. Yeah. I mean, the entire fan base loved it. But the thing is, like, nobody was upset that he did that. What made it bad was that it was clearly some player purposefully filming this to try to, like, get a coach in trouble, you know, or like,
and
make a coach look bad, and it had the opposite effect.
I saw some Austin local reporter, and he tweeted out like, "I would never send my kid to play at Texas, blah blah blah." And I'm like, right, I'm sure you wouldn't.
Come on,
I would send my kid to play at Texas. Are you
kidding? You would. Excellent.
He'd end up being like a kicker or something, but like, come on.
Well, then,
hey,
I mean,
Texas
then you want Urban Meyer to stay real
kickers.
far away from him, right? Yeah.
No kicking on the Texas practice field.
Unfortunately, my name doesn't end in ER.
True.
That's right. Yeah. Got to be Tucker, Dicker.
That was a niche joke right there for you guys.
No, we got it.
Big 12, we got it. It was.
I know you two got it, but I don't know.
Target audience got it.
We'll see if everyone else got it. Yeah. We'll see if my dad texts me about it and goes, "Hey, last week when you talked about Jenny Carlson and Jake said no relation, and you explained how the relation was to Bobby Reed, that's not what he was talking about." And I'm like, "Oh, I guess Jake's last name was Carlson."
I did have a follow-up question for Patrick regarding Gundy.
Okay.
Because I know Calvin and I have talked about this specific question before. Because I've also said that I don't know if we could get anybody better. Because I was like, if we fired Gundy, would we ever be in the running for like Marcus Freeman?
Unlikely.
Right?
But we'd have to put Knowles.
Yeah,
it had to be an assistant.
Mm-hmm. I think I would. I mean, the opposite would also be true, or this. It's not the opposite, but like the other side of that question is: would any of the big boy programs hire Gundy? And I'm talking blue bloods.
No,
I'm talking Clemson. I'm talking,
Florida,
Ohio
Tennessee.
State. Tennessee is in that zone, maybe. Florida, probably not. You know what I mean? Like
Tennessee, outside of record, because they've been not great these last couple of years. They've made a bunch of bad hires.
They still have a ton of money.
They have a ton of money, and I would say, like, it's hard to say because they have so much more money than Oklahoma State. But brand-wise, you're teetering on the same side of Tennessee. Like, you're not in the South Carolina range. You're not.
Speaking of which, we Spencer Rattler, that's a crazy one.
We'll get to that. But like, I would say
this is going to be an 8-hour podcast, but
we're closer to the Tennessee and farther from the Kentucky, South Carolina football brand.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree. I still think Texas or Tennessee is a bigger brand.
I agree.
I think South Carolina might be about right. I mean, to me, Oklahoma State is a way more significant program than South Carolina.
Right.
But like, maybe it's just that I've seen a lot more Oklahoma State football. I don't know.
Well, besides going through who's the Pac-12 equivalent, the Oklahoma State equivalent, right?
Yeah.
All type of stuff. one thing I know for sure without a doubt is that we are not LSU, right? No one's saying Gundy's going to go LSU, but Brian Kelly being whisked away with the 5th overall team in the country. I mean, I'm curious what your opinion, Patrick, is on why the timing had to be weird with Kelly, because theoretically Oklahoma State loses to Baylor and then one of the other things happen, right? Alabama loses, Cincinnati loses, Michigan loses. Then all of a sudden you have a Notre Dame team that is, right now they're 5th in the country. They were
11-1.
11-1 Notre Dame team in the college football playoffs. Now, granted, Brian Kelly did not have the best record with them in the college football playoffs, but it's not like everyone makes the college football playoffs. So you got a weird timing wise, right? Like, because he said I'm out before we knew how it was going to play out.
And for the record, I hate that. I think coaches should finish out the season with their team. I get that it's recruiting, recruiting is now so early that it's like they have to get a coach before their signing day. Otherwise it's like these players are going to leave. So I get that. But I agree. It's a bad spot to be in, because you're right. Notre Dame there was absolutely a very reasonable path for Notre Dame to make the playoff. It didn't happen. I agree with the decision. I don't think they deserve to make the playoff, but I agree that if you're Kelly leaving a top 5 team, if a team is telling you, here's $10 million on the table, you're either in or out right now, because we want you today, not tomorrow.
And
that's
given
difficult.
the personality doesn't fit. We know that. Like, Brian Kelly is about as opposite of Bayou as you get.
He is,
other than Jim Harbaugh.
It would be difficult to find. That's a good call. Yeah. Jim Harbaugh and Brian Kelly might be the most, like Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. Those might be the most perfect, like, if you were going to typecast, a head coach that both is the perfect vibe for your program and also the fan base probably really identifies with. Like, half of Notre Dame fans are 60-year-old Irish men like Brian Kelly. And he probably goes to every donor dinner and is pretty much the same guy as one of us. And then you have Harbaugh, who is of course just a Michigan man through and through, and put another 20 years on Harbaugh and he's going to be Bo Schembechler. Like, he's going to be that older guy coach who still just has the absolute command of his team and is still wearing khakis, just classic Michigan man.
Well,
so
because I was thinking, if someone gave you, those little connect the word to the definition things that you got in elementary school where you have to draw the line and stuff. Yeah, if you put Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly in LSU and USC, the Lincoln Riley line would go to LSU and the Brian Kelly line would go to USC. Because
that's a tough one.
It's just hard. Lincoln Riley is more LSU than Brian Kelly is USC.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. I do think
if you're on a blind date, you would be Lincoln Riley's going to LSU, and Joe Brady's going with them.
I was going to say it's because Joe Brady is basically a Lincoln Riley. He's like Lincoln Riley's little brother. He's Lincoln Riley light.
Yeah.
That's an interesting take. I hadn't thought about it that way. I think Lincoln Riley is probably going to do well at USC. In my opinion, if Mario Cristobal hadn't left, which we don't need to dive into that because that's a whole other can of worms, and we've talked about one game so far. But I do think if Cristobal and Riley were leading the North and South of the Pac-12 every year, and they were kind of a perennial coaching rivalry, sort of like the old days of Mike Bellotti and Pete Carroll. Those were fun teams, or even Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll after that. You know what I mean? That would be a lot of fun, because the Pac-12 is fun when USC and Oregon are good. And I think that would have been the ticket to that scenario.
That Dan Lanning versus Lincoln Riley is going to be. I don't know. I think Dan Lanning is a very good coach. I just don't know. It's like OU hiring a defensive guy, OU hiring a defensive guy. Now Oregon hires the defensive guy. It just kind of goes like against everything that we were thought to believe about these football programs.
Yeah,
where it's just kind of like, so now we have to watch different football. And now USC has like a competent head coach for the first time.
Yeah.
15 years or whatever.
A lot of stuff is, the landscape is changing. Like, does Brian Kelly LSU look like, does LSU suddenly look very different? Like, because Les Miles, like Ed Ogeron was a totally different animal, but like Coach O and Les Miles have a similar like intensity to them, in their program. Like, are we going to see LSU become like a more buttoned up program with Brian Kelly? I don't know, because Brian Kelly isn't the run through a wall, take the other guy's lunch money, send him home crying, this is our house, all that. He can try to be that guy, but like, and he can sometimes pull it off, but it's not really him. You know what I mean? He's a CEO, he's a father figure more than he is like a player's coach, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. This was my final football question before we get to the Braves.
Well, we still have to pick like 5 bowl games.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a rapid test,
3-hour podcast. Yeah, but go for it. Jay.
If Mike Gundy was at Auburn or Georgia, say his tenure right now was at Auburn or Georgia, okay, just kind of transport it. Does he still have a job?
No. Because he's made what, 3 conference championship games? 2?
Well, he won one outright and then made 1 championship game.
It's not great. I mean, because if you copy and paste that into the SEC, no coach is going to last. If you make 1 championship game at Auburn, that might be enough because it means you probably had to beat Bama to get there. So that's cool. It's sort of like.
But on that hand, Tommy Tuberville, right? Am I saying that right?
You're saying that wasn't enough for him? You're saying
because who won the championship with Cam Newton? Oh, Gus Malzahn. So
Gene
Chiswick
won the championship.
Okay, thank you. So,
and he was out 2 years later. So
and I think he was still making bowl games. That's what I think it comes down to, right? It's like,
and for the record, like the SEC anomaly, as it has. Not some coined term, but like as I view it, is it's Alabama or you get lucky with a transfer quarterback.
You mean like LSU?
LSU and Auburn. That's pretty much it in the SEC.
Yeah, because I mean, Auburn was not winning a championship with Bo Nix, that's for sure.
Was Auburn winning a championship without Cam Newton? No. Was Auburn
season? No.
Was LSU winning a championship without Joe Burrow? No.
Absolutely not.
So, and I'm not taking away from those teams. I'm just saying, like Mike Gundy, yes, the SEC expectation comes with it, but also as OSU fans, and you're a Texas fan, so you've seen it. We must raise our expectations, and it's like you said, I think Gundy has probably peaked.
But, I mean, yes, but he's also sustained that peak for a good amount of time.
So
which is why he should stick around.
Are you content with Mark Richt?
If I'm Georgia? Frankly, yeah.
Just
like I would have. Yeah, I honestly really liked Mark Richt at Georgia. And I did
too, because I think he's great.
I mean, he's got he had a string of 10-win seasons at Georgia, which is pretty darn good. Now, do I think Kirby Smart is also the real deal? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think Kirby Smart is the real deal.
So
I think he happens to be the second best coach and the second best team in his conference.
Yeah.
So he hasn't gotten a lot of recognition, but that's just one of those things.
So that's always my argument, because it's like they got rid of Mark Richt, and a lot of people living here were pretty 50-50 on it. They're like, well, I get it, but also like, now what? What are we going to do now?
Yeah, especially since Mark Richt was such a dud at Miami.
Right.
Like him leaving Georgia to take that Miami job looks, or no, I think Georgia fired him.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, Georgia fired him. But
we did a record on record breakdown, and I think what we said, Richt and Gundy were within like a couple games of each other, Calvin. It was like insanely close.
It was, but to be honest, Richt at Georgia versus during his time at Georgia versus Gundy's time at Oklahoma State, I think we'd be more than happy to be the second best team in the Big 12 every single year, like regardless, right?
Right.
My thing about Gundy, and will always be the thing, is like there's no one better currently to hire. But on the second part of it too, that I don't think I say enough, is what Patrick just said. We're at the peak. We're still at the peak. It's not like there's been a downside, right? Like we haven't come off we're still on like kind of the mountaintop of, if we think this is the peak Gundy, we haven't gone down, right? We're still at the top of the mountain. I mean, we went to the Big 12 championship and we're this year with a below average quarterback in the Big 12, right? Now, granted, he was the first team all Big 12 quarterback, but he threw 4 interceptions in our game, only scored 16 points, right? And was probably the reason why we lost.
Wait, he was first team all Big 12 quarterback?
Yeah.
He's not below average in the Big 12. He's below average nationally.
Oh, he's certainly
fair. Yeah. Well,
that's so interesting.
But like 4 interceptions, right? Four INTs. Not good. But it's a top. We're going to finish the season top 10. I mean, maybe we'll fall out, but I lose Notre Dame badly. But to say like, oh, there's somebody, let's look to next or whatever, just seems so short-sighted when in the long scope of stuff. Yeah, the OA insert sucks, right? Yeah, the other stuff that we hear about from time to time sucks. Do we wish Shane Ellenworth had been put in here and there for spots? For sure. I mean, both you and I do for sure, Jake, right?
Yeah.
But then again, 17 years at a school with a far than above winning record, and for a school that we're talking about has beaten Texas in the last decade and has in the average record, but we're still 10 and 26 all time against them, means that I'm perfectly happy with what we're currently doing. Do I want us to get better? For sure. Would I've loved to call 12 playoff this team this year? For sure. But looks like we may not even gotten that chance. So let's just play it forward. And let me ask you guys this. So Jake, you and I both have OSU beating Notre Dame, right? Patrick has the other way, but it's a very close game either way. Either way, we're thinking the game's within 4 or 5 points. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, it's one game picked at least in the 40 minutes.
Yeah. We can blow through these.
Yeah. So Ohio State, Utah. I'm just curious because that one at least is in LA, at the Rose Bowl. So Jake, we're gonna choose the bad OSU or the other red team, but from the state of Utah.
I am going to go Utah on 1, the transitive property, and 2, Ohio State's opt-outs.
Okay.
Yeah, are any of their wide receivers playing? Like
I don't know if they announced that yet, but I feel like at least one of them is not going to. And I feel like I'm picking Utah purely because I think they are going to have everybody, and Ohio State is not. And also, transitive property, Oregon beat Ohio State, and
correct.
Utah absolutely annihilated Oregon
twice. Yeah,
it was
that first one.
The second one was worse, honestly.
Yeah,
it was embarrassing.
No, it was like, and the thing is, both games, if memory serves, both games, Utah just got out to a massive lead, like immediately, like 24-0 or something. Like Oregon had no answer.
Well, and that was the funny. That was when I completely off record, like off tangent. But when I saw Bo Nix committed yesterday, I'm like, so they went from one guy that can't throw very well to another guy that can't throw very well.
Yeah, that's a big, that's a downgrade for most FBS programs, in my opinion. I think
he might
Bo
not
Nix
even win the only Power 5 program that he might be an upgrade for is like us in Florida.
Yeah, Florida, because didn't Emory Jones transfer also, or he's trying to transfer?
I want to say he is transferring, and Anthony Richardson is staying.
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Well, you guys know the last time that Bo Nix played against Oregon had the current AFC leading quarterback in Pro Bowl votes. That's their quarterback, Justin Herbert.
I'm not familiar.
Not familiar.
What team does he play for?
He plays for the Los Angeles Chargers. Oh, yeah, good hoodie.
And Bo Nix's first career win also came against Oregon.
Yep, 27-21. He's familiar with the state. He's been there, or well, actually, that's probably on a neutral field.
I think it was. Yeah,
more research to be done at another time. It was
in fact, I think it was I think it was a Jerry World. Yeah.
Yep. So glad we picked that one real quickly.
Okay.
But, with the rest of them here, Michigan State versus the no Kenny Pickett, Pittsburgh. So we're just going.
No one should care about this game
because the running back
care about this game.
The running back from Michigan State opted out too, right?
He did.
Yeah.
All right. So Michigan State. That's it.
I will say, like, this game probably was the best game on paper. Like, if you were to look at it, you're like, this is probably the most fun game to watch.
I mean, because Pitt's exciting.
Pitt's exciting.
Pitt's exciting.
Michigan State's secondary is like if they threw us three out there and said, go cover these guys. No offense. And then
I don't know. A little offense. There.
I'm also going to go Michigan State, but I'm upset that this game is here and I cannot go see it. Like, tickets had to have just dropped. Incredible. Just plummet.
Yeah, I do. I can't see Pitt winning without Kenny Pickett. That's the main thing. I don't think Michigan State is some amazing team. Although, Walker is fun to watch. Like he breaks tackles the way some of the great backs do. So yeah, there's not much reason for me to watch this game anymore. So, but I do think, I'll give the edge to Michigan State.
I'm going to go with their team with their starting quarterback.
Exactly.
It'll be a nice game to watch because it's a New Year's Six game, so it'll be televised all real beautifully and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The maybe next game here, Baylor versus Ole Miss.
Now that's a
State
great
Sugar Bowl. I think that'll be a good game. Is Matt Corral playing?
Yes,
I believe he is. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it'll be a good game, depending on how.
How bizarre is it that? I mean, a lot of respect to Matt Corral for he's playing, and Kenny Pickett opted out.
Yeah,
I think it's good. I think it's good for him.
Yeah,
I think Pickett made a business decision after he saw Corral's playing, right? Because Pickett goes against the Michigan State defense, which you just said that I could play for Michigan State, which means their defense can't be that great. I'm assuming it's not the other way around here. We're saying I'm that good at defense that I'd help them out.
Yeah.
So
just go watch the first 5 minutes of the Ohio State game, and you'll be like, okay.
But if you watch him play Michigan,
that was ugly.
You watch him play number 2 overall seed Michigan.
That's true.
A little different.
I watched them play Cade McNamara.
But with all that being said, I'm taking Ole Miss. Barely.
I am too.
I saw how Baylor played against us. We didn't have the best quarterback performance. I think Matt Corral's a step up or two above Spencer Sanders. I don't know if maybe we're going to get that from this podcast so far. So we're going to take Ole Miss.
I think he's
4 steps. Hey, you know what? I think I've thrown out enough steps of Spencer Sanders that people are going to know.
This might be my game of the bowl season. If I wasn't responsibly retired, I would hammer Ole Miss till the cows come home, because Ole Miss Ole Miss was inexplicably an underdog in the Egg Bowl. And I was like, this is the easiest bet of all time. And I didn't do it because I was responsibly retired. But that's like I have been so high on this Ole Miss team all year, and that has not changed. Like, they're 10-2. Like, this is a good team in the SEC. Like, they're going to destroy Baylor. They're going to destroy Baylor. Baylor did not look that good in the Big 12 championship game. And Ole Miss is like arguably the third best SEC team.
Yeah.
Like, pretty easily arguable, or like arguably the third best SEC team. And
the third best, say it's arguable.
Yeah, I think they're pretty solidly the number 3 team in the SEC this year. And Lane Kiffin can score on anybody, even that vaunted Waco, Texas Baylor defense. I don't think they're going to have any problem.
Yeah, especially if I don't know if Gary Bohannon's playing either, which I don't know how much that matters. But like,
I haven't heard anything. No, I think it does matter. I mean, I don't think he's got some work to do, but I don't know. Let me see if I can find out.
All right. Well, the next game that we've got on the docket here to choose from, though, is the college football playoffs. So, Cincy, Alabama. Like, are we, Pat? I mean, is it going to be close? That's my question to you. You're taking Alabama, but is it
I hope it'll be close. I really do. I hope it'll be close. I'm so happy that Cincinnati is in it. I'm so happy they're in it. I think they're a great team. I do think they're a great team. Like, Cincinnati beating Notre Dame by 2 touchdowns, like, that's a great win. That is a really good win, especially on the road at Notre Dame. Like, so impressive. But I think Bama destroys them. Like Bama looked so good in the SEC championship game. Like, no one should be surprised if Bama wins this championship again in dominant fashion.
I will say, since we're about to talk about Georgia, Alabama is the first competent offense outside of Tennessee that Georgia played all year. Now, I think Georgia is great defensively, but it's kind of scary that Alabama was able to just come out and have their way with Georgia, because it's like, yeah, this defense is really great. Georgia's defense is really great, but run through their schedule and tell me one good offense they play. Just one.
No, it's fair. And the thing, and Georgia's offense isn't anything to really write home about. Like, it's not Bama. It's not Bama. Like,
Georgia's weird because they just seem to always be missing the one player. And it's been since Aaron Murray. They've had everything around the quarterback, but not had the quarterback.
Well, and then they had Justin Fields, and they let him walk because they had Jake Fromm.
That's a story that I will tell off the air.
Like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
NFL quarterback as of this weekend, Jake Fromm.
And Jacob Eason. They also had Jacob Eason as well. Who is still better
than Washington. Yeah. I think how many? I think Fromm got some actual snaps.
It was for the Giants, though. Does that count?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. Against the Cowboys, that's always the big time.
I'm also taking phone calls.
Exactly. I don't know if
we all three are in that essence.
Yeah. So just since we can transition to the other semifinal game, but I don't even know if Georgia this is a pretty close to a toss-up game for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if Georgia gets by Michigan. I mean, Michigan is looking really good. And I'm a little worried that the time off might kill some of Michigan's momentum and give Georgia plenty of time to kind of recover from an emotional loss. But I love this Michigan team.
I do too. I used to strongly dislike Jim Harbaugh. Now I just think he's like an analytic nerd turned college football coach. That's what he looks like to me, like pleated khakis, the whole thing. But I think Georgia is probably the better coach team if you just want to look at, tenure of college football.
Could be.
Kirby Smart has arguably been better, and I don't even really know if it's arguable. Kirby Smart has probably been better than Jim Harbaugh in college.
Yep.
He's never coached a team to a Super Bowl, but that's why I'm prefacing in college. But like, if you're just looking on the field, I mean, quarterback position, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Wide receiver, George Pickens is probably the best guy for Georgia, but he also didn't play most of the year. So
yeah, and he doesn't he's not a game-changing player, I would say.
He could be if he were healthy, but like he never is, so you just whatever.
Yeah.
Running backs, again, crapshoot. And then defenses, like I don't know. And I don't even know if I want to pick a winner in this game because I could literally see either team winning. And this is probably one of the first times I felt that way in a long time.
I'm gonna pick Michigan. I'm gonna say we're seeing Michigan, Alabama. I more or less, because at the end of the day, I think it's a toss-up, and I don't want to see Georgia. I don't like the SEC rematch. It happens. We've seen that in the college football playoffs before, where I think wasn't Alabama versus Georgia before, and Alabama
in the championship
raced
game.
them. Yeah, and it wasn't even close. So
no, that was a close game.
That was a close game. Okay, so
because that was the one. Yeah, the Devontae Smith. Yeah, the Devontae Smith touchdown catch when he was a freshman.
That's right. And the Tua comes at halftime. Is that the game?
Yes.
Yeah, was it? Yeah.
Okay.
I believe so. Yeah.
So with that, I think it's also a toss-up, but I'm going to pick Michigan. Just honestly, go blue. I lived in the state before, and I want to see Michigan beat them. That's it's that close that I'm throwing out these like anomaly reasons why, right?
So riddle me this. So, and I don't know if you guys experienced the same thing, but the whole season, I was on board that like Georgia is the most dominant team in college football. Like nobody's beating Georgia. Like, are you kidding me with that defense? Like that's an NFL defense. Nobody is going to score on Georgia.
Yeah.
And then when Bama came in and literally had their way with Georgia's defense, like my opinion of Georgia changed so much in one game because Bama is the measuring stick for whether you're a championship team. They are the measuring stick. Now, was Georgia completely non-competitive? No, like, they made a couple stops, it's fine, but Alabama was clearly the better team. And that to me, like, completely flipped me on Georgia. It was like, if you were as good as you looked all year, you would have beaten Bama. It comes down to that. So like now I'm just a doubter of Georgia in general. So yeah, I'll take Michigan as well, especially plus the 6.5.
I'm going to take Georgia due to my semi-bias, I guess.
You live in the state currently.
That's I live in the state currently, and that's about it. But yeah, my opinion, I think initially changed on Georgia once I saw how bad Clemson's offense was. Because at first I was like, oh my gosh, they held Clemson to 3 points, and then Clemson's offense sucked.
Bad.
So now their defense was good, so that didn't, the amount of points that they scored didn't really matter to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, once the year progressed and we're in like week 8, week 9, week 10, and I'm like, oh, Clemson is still really bad.
Yeah. And the other thing too,
relatively, obviously.
Right. Yeah, relatively bad. I remember seeing this stat during the Georgia Tech game, like in the last regular season week of the season, that if Georgia had not scored a single point on offense, they would have been 5-6 going into that game with Georgia Tech. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, just between all their defensive touchdowns and the number of shutouts that they had, or like times they held their opponent to a field goal, it's like, okay, like no offensive touchdowns and you could still go 5-6. Like, that's crazy. You could win games with a couple field goals and defensive play. Like, that's crazy.
Well, like the best quarterback they faced all year, outside of obviously Bryce Young, like the entire season, was Hendon Hooker.
Probably. I mean, do I think DJ can be a good quarterback? Yeah, but like in that game and in most of this season, like, you know, just didn't have it. So he has the talent to be that, you know, to be that level of quarterback, but I agree. Yeah, he certainly was not a factor.
And it's like, you know, people that listen to this will probably be like, who's Hendon Hooker? And I'm like, yeah, that's my point. I only know who that is because my brothers go to Tennessee.
There you go.
That's the only reason.
All right. Well, it comes down to it. Pick a national champion. I mean, Bama, I guess. I don't like saying
Bama. It's Bama.
Right.
I hope Michigan or Cincy wins, but Cincy's not going to win, so I hope Michigan does. Well, that's pretty much what it comes down to.
I wouldn't mind. I would like to see Georgia win the national championship to end what it'll be 41 years of unjustified publicity for them.
I'll amend my statement. I would love for Georgia to win if they do it beating Bama in a rematch.
Okay. That's fair.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, Georgia beating Cincy. Not feeling it.
Although
I don't think it'll happen, but
that's a great way for Georgia to win a national championship, is to do it playing Cincy. That's a favorable matchup, I would say.
And maybe Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
What?
Sounds great.
It would be a good way for Oklahoma State to win a national championship if they also got to play Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And not any of the other three teams that are in the playoff.
Yeah. We're going to know. I feel like we're going to know in the first quarter. I'll roll it back even more. We're going to know in the first two drives what kind of game Bama Cincy is going to be. In my opinion.
2 drives each?
Let's go 3 drives. Okay. 1 by one team, 2 by the other. I don't care which. Okay. But after the third drive, we're going to know what we're dealing with here. Because if Bama gets the ball first, if Cincy gets a 3 and out on either of Bama's first 2 possessions, we got ourselves a ball game. If that doesn't happen, I don't know if we do.
I'll just wait for an I told you so text.
Yeah. If Bama's up 14-0 with 10 minutes left in the first quarter, then we'll also know what kind of game we're dealing with. But I think that's more likely than Cincy pulling the upset.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you guys this, then, as the last quiz question of the night. Which of the games we've talked about so far do you think is the cheapest, and which is the most expensive to go to? For like the low, I'm going like the cheapest to get in, the stadium.
The one here, I would say the one here is probably the cheapest.
Peach
Michigan
Bowl,
State, Pittsburgh. Is where you're going.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah. Now the most expensive is going to be, Michigan, Georgia.
So,
I think.
Jake?
Yeah, I'll go Michigan, Georgia as well.
So you guys are both correct. Both those guesses. The Orange Bowl, for anyone curious, the cheapest ticket to get into the stadium after fees on this is all through StubHub is $344 to get in.
With fees?
Well,
with fees.
That's not that bad.
Yeah.
Cheapest ticket to get into Mercedes-Benz, Atlanta, Georgia, Michigan State versus Pittsburgh is $21.
What?
After fees.
That's why I thought about going. But
it's almost worth the plane ticket at that point, you know?
I know.
Just kidding. Not for no Kenny Pickett and no Kenneth Walker.
Seriously.
Yeah.
What about a good time?
7 p.m. 7 p.m. game. Is that what we're going after?
I'd rather go to the Sugar Bowl. I'd rather go to New Orleans.
That's fair.
Plus, it's closer. Yeah.
You might keep your tires. Just forget it.
Clearly an automobile theft type of joke here. Just didn't know how we're in there.
During the NBA All-Star game, a lot of people lost their rims.
Ooh.
In Nolans?
No,
New Orleans? Oh, in Atlanta. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair.
Fair. I would say, like, outside of the national championship, like the Sugar Bowl should probably be the most expensive game, not including the playoffs, because of the proximity of the teams. Like, those people are actually going to be able to drive to New Orleans to get there.
Yeah.
So I think that matters because, like, I looked up flights to Phoenix and they're like $600. And I was like,
that's what Calvin was saying. Yeah.
No thanks.
I told Patrick he could do the reverse of what I'm doing. He could fly to Phoenix, but that still is tough. I think one-way flights to Phoenix from Dallas are still tough. Like if you fly home for Christmas and then fly Phoenix. Also, no Notre Dame fans in our section. So sorry, Pat. I don't think you're wearing orange anyway.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
That's just a great game though, too. Like Baylor Ole Miss, like that's a fun matchup, I think. And yeah, that's the one I would go to.
Talk about a clash of fan bases.
Yeah. Your private school, preppy Baylor kids.
Baptist.
And then you got Ole Miss. Oxford, Mississippi.
In New Orleans.
In New Orleans, yeah.
The Rebels.
The Rebels, yeah. Just something else.
Well, at an hour and 11 minutes in, Carlos Correa, is he going to Detroit? Is he staying in? I mean,
he's not going to Detroit
here, but I mean, do have some MLB questions, and I know Jake has some more here as well too. So, yeah, what do you MLB, Jake? I'll let you take over a little bit here, but biggest free agency move here in MLB. Who do you think's left, and where do you think they go?
I think the two biggest people left are probably Correa and then Freddie Freeman, because for all intents and purposes, he is a free agent as it stands. I hope he doesn't leave, but
I don't think he will.
It's hard to put it out of the question that he would. And I know the Braves' reluctance is they don't want him to be another Pujols. That's essentially
sign him for too long. Yeah,
sign him for too long. Pay an older guy, and old being relative because he's like 31, 32, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so signing him for a long period of time, and you know, him playing on an NL team, which it probably won't really matter, because we'll probably have the DH anyways, so it's not going to matter that much.
True.
I do think Freddie stays, though. I think if he goes anywhere, he probably goes to Los Angeles. Pick one of the two.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah, that would suck. What about Correa, Patrick? What are you thinking?
I mean, I thought he was going to the Tigers, but
they chose a crappy shortstop instead.
Sure. I mean, you could see that way. I don't. I mean, I think it's a good move, but I think, gosh, I mean, it's tough not to like start really holding on to some hope that he stays in Houston. But I think everybody was pretty realistic. The odds of that happening were like about the same as them happening for George Springer, which is pretty low. So I was kind of resigned to him leaving from the start. So the fact that is kind of like resurrected as a potential option, like there's just fewer and fewer teams that are going to do that. So
I know Correa is really good, especially defensively. He, was he a Gold Glover this year? Right?
He was.
Yeah. He was. So, but I don't necessarily think that it's the biggest loss. Like, I think he's obviously a big loss for the Astros, obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't think it completely tears their team down. Like, I think we won a World Series with Dansby Swanson as our shortstop. That I just don't know. Like, if you're the Astros, you're like, okay, Correa leaves, but how much is it really going to affect us?
I mean, we'll feel it for sure. Especially come postseason, God willing. Right. I mean, realistically, I think, because Bregman can play either third or short. Now, he doesn't have nearly the range that Correa does.
Nobody does.
Correa's what, like 6'4", 6'4" plus, can get to anything.
Yeah.
But I think, I think realistically, Correa probably goes to the Yankees, the Dodgers, and it sucks. But like, they're who can pay him. I mean, if he doesn't go there, maybe he comes back to the Astros, and says that. But like, the thing is, like, Correa, out of anybody, has really not shied away from talking trash, and kind of standing up for the Astros in the midst of all the cheating and stuff. Like, he's been pretty unapologetic and has pissed a lot of other teams off.
He was a double downer.
He did, exactly. He doubled down.
He was perfect for the Yankees.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, like, would the Dodgers even sign him? Like, I feel like they would, but like, is Correa petty enough to say, no, I'm not playing for those Dodgers?
I
don't know.
Would the Red Sox sign him?
Because they have
Cora, which I think that means something.
I think meant that means
something.
Would Evan Turner let him in the clubhouse? This is the key question with the Dodgers. Would Evan Turner let him in the clubhouse, or would he have to sleep on the field?
Justin Turner?
Or
Trey Turner?
Either. I clearly said the one Turner who's not on the Dodgers.
Yeah, he's not.
Yeah. Justin or Trey.
I was like,
clearly Justin. Yeah,
Justin. No, there'll be beef to squash for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, you need a hard knocks. You need a hard knocks type show for the Dodgers in that scenario,
or just wherever Correa goes.
Yeah, Correa showing up to the facility. Who's he going to fight with? Like,
if he signs with the Yankees, Aroldis Chapman will swing on
him. He'll throw at his head from the bullpen.
Yes,
like he'll get him. Like I wonder, like, how much of that, like, I would love to see it. I would love to see
them opting out of the All-Star game too, right? Because that happened as well.
Yeah. That one, there was a thinly veiled excuse of injury. Some of them it was legit, but Altuve not playing. I'm pretty sure Altuve was completely healthy at the time of the All-Star game.
It was like if I put saran wrap over my face and told you I was Ryan Reynolds, and you're like, oh, right. Obviously,
yeah. Why should he lie? Yeah.
Yeah. Why would he lie? It's obviously Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of leads into my next question. If you were to look at the Braves on paper, including free agents, and you were to look at the Astros on paper, the Astros to me could be more likely to return to the World Series, just with the amount of players the Braves are losing.
That could be. I mean, but I think the Braves would still be the Braves would still be better off in the starting pitching, I think.
Yes.
And I think, I mean, pitching.
But that was the talk. Honestly. That was the talk before the series. Just
absolutely, yeah. And it holds true. I mean, the thing is, the Astros, like, it was a small miracle that the Astros made it as far as they did with that bullpen. Like, it's just so young. And so the trade deadline, like, that turned the team around, in my opinion. Like, that made them a World Series team.
Was Maton,
to have Phil Maton, whatever you like.
Was he a trade dedeadline acquisition?
He was. So he was a pickup.
Indians,
Graveman,
right?
Yeah, Graveman was a pickup, and then who was the third guy? It was I'll think of it in 2 seconds.
And the problem is they didn't have. I mean, against the Braves, they just didn't have a lot of times to use Graveman because they weren't up.
And he had one outing where he really, and
that was like what the 9-2 game or whatever it was.
Let's just say 5. He did not perform well.
Yeah. But Phil Maton he was pretty good. He, like, of all the Astros pitchers that I saw, he was probably the best one. But yeah, I mean, starting pitching, it was interesting though, because like the Braves rolled in there with literally 2 starting pitchers after Charlie Morton broke his leg.
Right.
And you're like, okay, so we have Ian Anderson, who's younger than all 3 of us.
Yeah.
And then you have Max Fried, who looked like objective garbage against the Dodgers.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's why it's a team sport. Yeah.
Big but. But yeah, I like the only reason I think the Astros would be more likely to return than the Braves because you have 3.5 key starters that are free agents right now.
Yeah.
And key starters, not really key starters, but key players. You have.
It's tough. It's tough for me to see Freeman not re-signing with the Braves, but maybe I'm naive.
I hope you're not.
To me, that's almost like an Altuve situation.
I just can't imagine, or Bregman even. Like, you just can't imagine them going anywhere else.
But he's the same. He's basically the same age. He's probably a little older than Altuve, but not by much. Like, it's a similar, career trajectory.
You're talking about having to sign Freddie Freeman. Jock Peterson's probably gone.
Mm-hmm.
Just in general.
But he fulfilled his purpose.
He fulfilled his purpose. And then you have Rosario and Soler. It's tough and you already re-signed Duvall. I think they tendered.
I mean, out of those guys that are left, I think you keep Rosario.
I agree.
I think you keep Rosario and you let Peterson walk, and then Soler. I mean, you should try to keep Soler.
Yeah,
I like Soler a lot, but
especially with Acuna coming back.
True, but I think Rosario keeps a spot in that outfield.
Yeah, and Soler's interesting with the DH conversations. Which I guess we can.
So is Peterson, honestly.
So is Peterson.
I mean, now Peterson, yeah, maybe to a less extent, but yeah. Now, personally, I'm in favor of that. I think universal DH needs to happen. Mm-hmm. I would have made that a change before some of the other changes that they made. Most of the other changes that they made, I still cannot get on board with the 3-batter minimum. I
can't either.
I hate that more than I hate the extra inning runner, although I do hate that.
I would rather. What were the two big ones? The extra inning runner, and there was another one that were like.
I mean, I think it was the 3-batter minimum.
Was it the 3-batter minimum?
Or
there were. I feel like I'm missing one.
Like a rule change?
Yeah, there was a rule change that I don't know. Maybe
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the spider tax stuff, but that wasn't like a game rule.
Yeah, that was. I mean,
although that probably affects the game more than either of those two things.
Yeah. So, do you imagine this season starting on time?
Yeah. Like, do I think there's a work stoppage? I think it probably does.
I don't think it's going to start till the All-Star break.
Oh shit, that would suck.
That would very much suck.
The thing is, they could realistically postpone or shorten spring training, but you don't want to do that. So if they want everything to be truly on schedule, they would need a CBA by like Valentine's Day, probably.
Yeah, I think the big kicker is the minor league stuff. Based on everything I've read, I think that's probably one of the big things is how they treat minor league players, and just a few of like the negotiation, like cosmetic things where it's like, yeah, they do still kind of treat players like crap.
Now they did just guarantee housing, didn't they? That was a step for the minor leagues. Was the team now provides housing for their minor league players, which I think is kind of cool. But
yeah, because that was suggested at first, and then they're like, yeah, okay.
But that was a done deal before any of this lockout. So
that almost felt like a non-negotiable from both sides.
Could be, yeah, especially maybe also as like an offset to canceling minor league baseball for a year. You know what I mean? Like,
seriously.
Like that might just be hey guys, sorry about that. We might have jumped the gun on just canceling the whole season.
Our bad
housing. Yeah,
our bad.
But
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff with minor league baseball it should change, but the biggest thing for me, at least, would be the service time stuff. Like something's got to change around there where Fernando Tatis Jr. or Adley Rush. No, I'm going to
Adley Rushman.
Yeah, Rushman.
Okay. Yeah. Like these guys who are coming out, like the collegiate programs are taking a hit on the viewer watchership side and the popularity side because you get these guys in the majors, and all of a sudden the Adley guy, Oregon State won the College World Series, I want to say, or at least played in it with him.
They won it with him.
Number 1 overall pick on the Tigers, who looks like could use him. But
Orioles.
we don't, right?
Or
thank you. See, I have no idea what baseball is anymore. But either way, haven't seen the guy in the majors, right? Like he's the best college player. He's drafted number 1 overall. We haven't seen him yet, and that was a couple seasons ago. So, and I don't know when we do see him. So, as a very casual baseball fan, and granted, everyone just heard my explanation of getting like 7 things wrong, Evan Turner, but
it's fine.
We all know that the fandom would be better if you had these guys who are minor leaguers come up sooner. Do you think there's anything with it of age requirement wise? Because it changes to that instead, where like, okay, hey, now you almost there's something written in where if a guy is 23, you can't, or he's 24 or whatever, you can't have him in the minors for more than. I mean, clearly you can't have to do something because, well, if the guy's not playing that well, then there's a reason why he's not going to be there. But on the other end of it, is there something that can be done of getting these guys who clearly we all know should be playing, but kind of break the cycle of the Tatis? Like if the Padres waited with Tatis for another, I think, 30 days or whatever, they would have another year of control over his contract where they didn't because they were like, okay, we're just going to bring him up because the story goes Machado and Hosmer like, bring the dude up now. He's that good.
I think the way that you need to get around that is you, first of all, not looking at the CBA stuff. Outside of that, you need to stop with those like pre-contract things where, and this was there are multiple articles written about all this like sharky stuff that goes on with a lot of the Latin American players. Because if you look like Acuna, and I know I'm a Braves fan, but Acuna and Albies both signed contracts that are very favorable to the organization. And it is said because, like, there's an article written that it was written like 3 years ago that says Ozzie Albies has the worst contract in baseball. Just because he's getting paid so little for being arguably the best second baseman in the league. And so it's tough because it's like the first thing they need to do is get these like shark type of people out of baseball. The second thing they need to do, which I think eliminates the problem of what you're talking about, Calvin, the age requirement thing, is they need to install the cap floor. Which I have a feeling is probably outside of the minor league stuff, is probably a lot of the stuff that came up in those CBA contracts where it was cap ceiling or cap floor. And I think cap floor is better because you see teams like the Orioles, the Pirates, who will literally just camp down there at the bottom, trade away all their best players, not pay anybody, and just rake in money. And they suck. But they'll just rake in money. I mean, the Padres trade away Brian Reynolds for a bag of chips. Like
who?
Or not Brian Reynolds, I'm sorry, Adam Frazier. They traded away Adam Frazier to the Padres for nothing. Oh, sorry, I was thinking of the better.
That was one. I got one.
Yeah, yep. the better player, Brian Reynolds, who should have been traded as well. But regardless, like there are teams that intentionally do it because the owners are only worried about making money.
Well, but do you also think the Padres are just like, screw it, we're not going to trade Hosmer, so we might as well trade Frazier? Hosmer's not on a tradable contract, so I'm just trying to back the Padres here for a second. Hosmer's on the opposite of a tradable contract. Frazier was on what is the tradable contract of the guys on the team. So,
well, I think like Hosmer versus Frazier kind of puts the lens towards why a cap floor is necessary. Because you've got guys like Adam Frazier, who is clearly better than Eric Hosmer right now. Probably wasn't better when the contract was signed. But now who's going to take Eric Hosmer? Like, this isn't the NBA. You can't go trade Trevor Ariza for a first-round pick and call it a day. Like, it doesn't work like that.
But also picks just aren't – everything is worth different, MLB, NBA.
But you can't trade picks in the MLB.
Right. I mean, you can't do it. But I would say the Padres trading Anthony Rizzo to the Red Sox, like, I mean, that's right. And then him getting traded later on to the Cubs. But the Padres trading it like that is just short-sighted but that had to do nothing with contracts. And when we talk about contracts in MLB, there should be a floor. But why force the Rays, who are a small market franchise that's almost every single year there's the perennial article, will the Rays move to insert X city, right? And why should the Rays have a cap floor when they're making the playoffs, making the World Series? They're doing things fine.
Yeah.
Why should the Rays almost have to take Hosmer in a deal, right? And like, if they wanted to deal with if they needed to meet a cap floor, because
the problem is the Rays are such good drafters, so they're like the ultimate anomaly.
Well, so why make the no, that's fair. So why make the who am I trying to think of here? Why make the
A's?
I mean, the Oakland A's be the Sacramento Kings, right? Why not? Because if the Sacramento Kings did not have to sign De'Aaron Fox, they might have the flexibility to sign Tyrese Halliburton and a couple other guys to longer-term deals or spread out, whatever. But they might have you'd have the flexibility to throw every single dollar you've ever had in your entire life at Luka Doncic whenever he comes up, or Zion Williamson whenever he comes up, whatever. There aren't that many guys who are going to sign with the Oklahoma City Thunder in free agency and stay for more than 5 years, stay for longer than their contract.
Yeah.
So why in baseball, when you have even more guys, even on more, rosters and salaries, that are deeper? Because I'm with you. I like the cap floor idea, but I like the universal DH idea a lot. And like priority list, universal DH every year. Then secondly, it'd be do away with the extra runner on second.
Yeah.
I don't mind baseball going long games. I think that's one of the fun things with the sport is that there isn't a time limit. And I feel like you're adding an artificial time limit when you do that. And then, the 3-batter minimum is the third thing for me, just because I'm not as frequent as a fan. So when I'm watching like postseason baseball with Patrick, and it's all right, it's great, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, here's a different guy. Like, because they hit 3-batter minimum, but hang on, we got to keep him in until he hits that, right? Like, that sucks, but it's not a huge of a difference for me knowing I'm watching like the postseason heavily, but not watching every game heavily.
Yeah. So I think the floor, I think there should be a floor and a cap, just in general. And Patrick, like, I know you're probably in the same boat, because it's like I'm tired of seeing the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, Philly. Like, you can name off the teams immediately that are spending $70 million more than the next team. Like, it's just, but then you have the Baltimore Orioles, who's spent $42 million this year. And what do you know? They're the worst team in baseball. I'm not saying that money directly leads to success in baseball, because it's baseball.
And it didn't have much to do with the Orioles this past year.
Right.
To be honest.
But of the team, like, the league average this year was $127 million for a payroll. Only 2 teams below that margin made the playoffs. All the other ones above were above that league average. So statistically, if you spend more money, you're going to go to the playoffs. But, it's also like you could beat the Mets, who are spending even more money this year.
I want the Mets to be good so bad.
But
they're just not going to. They're just not going to. I mean, if all their players actually performed, they would be such a fun team to watch, but they just don't.
Javi Baez played himself into a $160 million contract for 3 weeks of baseball. Because statistically, all year, Dansby Swanson was a better baseball player this year than Javi Baez was.
Go figure.
That's neither here nor there, because one person made money and the other person is not going to make that much money. But yeah, Calvin, I think the age requirement thing is interesting, because I think it's fair to have minor league lifers, as there have been. But I also think it's like, yeah, why the hell didn't you bring up Rutschman? Why? What? Like, you're a crappy team. Why would you not just bring up your best player and see what he can do?
Because you wait on the service requirement. The requirement thing for contracts has got to be dealt with in some type of way where it's better. Because you're talking about minor leaguers who come up through systems but are not from the U.S., guys from Cuba, South America, Central America, whatever, getting dealt a bad hand from it. And we're also talking about guys who come from college ball getting a bad hand dealt with it too, right?
Yeah.
So there's one thing that's not working out real well, and it's that. And it needs to be changed to, some form or fashion. But I don't think it's going to be changed tomorrow or the next day. I think the university age thing is way easier to change than changing how, when players are signed and their priority over their contract is dealt with, just because there's so many guys, right? Yeah. Basketball is a 15-man roster at the end of the day. So the Oklahoma City Thunder have too many draft picks right now, currently set up where they will have too many guys on the roster every single year, forever, unless they trade their draft picks. If the Houston Astros or the Atlanta Braves have 37 draft picks over the next 15 years, cool. They probably already have more than that built in. So that's not a huge, right? Like, that's just not a huge issue, because there's a 26-man roster for the postseason, 40-man roster, et cetera, et cetera. So my point being is that there has to be some way to be dealt with the player control contract situation of their time in the league when they're minors versus their majors. And I think that's what the lockout's going to be regarding. But I also think that the lockout, some form of agreement will happen whenever one side is too afraid they're going to lose too much money. That's what happens to every lockout. NHL was like, let's do a full lockout. They did it, and it worked out real poorly for them. They're building back. Now we have In the Crease with Barry on SportsCenter. I forgot his last name. But, ABC clearly wants the hockey contract, so that's good for NHL. When all of a sudden, ABC and Disney really want all of the MLB contracts, that'll be really good. But they have a couple. So as TV money increases, we'll see these teams decide to break the CBA and do a new CBA and restructure it so players can get more money. But everyone's making more money. So it's not going to change a huge deal. Everyone's making so much more money with all the TV deals. I mean, for just real short instances here, we're seeing NFL games being moved to horrible times for fans to actually be in the stands for those games. Horrible times. A ton of games. And still, we're still playing the games because the TV money rules all. And so once that happens with MLB, everyone will be set. And all of a sudden, spring training games, they're not what MLB draws really a bunch of money off of. MLB draws a bunch of more money off of their local TV networks, Valley Sports and Fox, former Fox Sports, etc., than ABC. So once those start kicking in, where Baltimore, Oakland, Atlanta, the Cleveland Guardians, and other teams that are at the bottom of the payroll here, Pittsburgh, Miami, Arizona, then that's when we'll see a CBA deal reach, and we'll have a season, and it might be a 120 games, suppose 160, but it'll be a season.
The running joke was after the Rays, once the Rays signed Wander Franco to that super long extension, everyone's like, all right, here comes the floor. Like, we're all getting the salary cap floor now because this is the first contract that they've put out.
Yeah, that's true. It's the first big contract the Rays have put out in a long time.
And so I think, like, if you want to look at and I know Wander Franco is like, I think anybody in the league probably would have given him that kind of money. But if you want to look at something that's pretty indicative of like, okay, this could tell us what's going to happen in the future, that contract right there is probably telling us that something with salary caps is going to happen in the new CBA, because the Rays aren't just paying somebody for no reason.
Fair. But with that being said, I don't know. I think this is as good a stopping place as any.
I
here.
Agree.
Hour and 40 plus minutes in. Not the longest podcast I've ever recorded, believe it or not, but definitely one of the longer ones. So with that being said, Patrick, thank you so much for joining. Jake, thank you so much for joining here as well. Go Pokes if you're watching this live. Horns down, Jake. All right, it's fine. I mean, I wasn't going to disrespect Texas. I was just going to respect Oklahoma State. I was going to respect Oklahoma State.
You going to flag me, Patrick?
YouTube might. I have no control over YouTube. But with that being said, thank you so much for listening to the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. Please follow at the CGA Tour on Twitter and Instagram for more. And I'm tired, so we'll catch you guys again soon. Peace.
See ya.